Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are pulling a document off the shelf that I think, well, that most people probably assume they already know.
Oh, yeah.
It's one of those greatest hits of ancient literature. We're going to be looking at Hebrews chapter 11.
Right. The Hall of Faith, as it's usually called, on the Sunday school circuit.
Exactly, the Hall of Faith. And usually when we talk about this text, the vibe is very, I don't know, inspirational poster. You know what I mean?
Totally. It's a list of superheroes.
Right, a list of superheroes who did impossible things. And the takeaway is always something like, hey, try harder, be more like these guys.
Mm-hmm.
But you've brought a stack of research today that suggests we are reading this, well, completely wrong.
We are. And honestly, calling it a Hall of Fame is a bit of a category error.
A category error.
Yeah, it's like looking at the periodic table of elements and calling it a list of cool rocks.
Okay, that's a bold comparison. I like it. Where are you going with this?
I mean it.
Yeah.
If you actually analyze the structure of Hebrews 11, which is what we're going to do today, it's not a biography collection.
Okay.
It's a treatise on physics. Or, to be more precise, it is a legal and structural investigation into the architecture of reality itself.
The architecture of reality. See, this is where you lose me a little bit, because when I hear the word faith, especially now, in our time, I don't think physics.
Oh, of course not.
I think feelings. I really hope this works out, but I have absolutely no data to support that hope. So
Yeah.
Faith, isn't faith just optimism with a religious coat of paint?
That is the modern definition, yes.
Yeah.
100%. In our current cultural dictionary, faith has become synonymous with wishful thinking.
A coping mechanism.
A psychological coping mechanism, exactly. It's
Right.
what you do when you run out of facts. But the document we are deep diving into today, it opens by completely dismantling that view.
How so?
The author of Hebrews argues that faith isn't an emotion you feel, it's an ontological substrate.
Ontological substrate. Like, okay, you're going to have to speak English. What does that actually mean?
It means faith is the stuff reality is built on. I'm serious. The text makes a series of claims that are honestly mind-bending if you really sit with them.
Like what?
It claims faith is harder than matter. It claims faith creates matter from speech. It claims faith is what makes ethics binding, and it creates a legal authorization for civil disobedience against the state.
So we are definitely not talking about believing in yourself.
No, not even in the same universe. We are talking about the structural integrity of the cosmos.
Okay.
So the mission for this deep dive is to look at history, the history of this people, through this single lens. Faith as the operating system of reality.
All right. I'm skeptical, but I'm listening. If faith isn't a feeling, what is it? Let's look at the text itself. Section 1. The physics of faith. It starts with a definition, right there in verse 1.
Right at the top.
Now, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen.
And right out of the gate, we hit a translation roadblock.
Of course we do. It always happens.
The English word substance is a bit weak here. It sounds like schist or stuff.
Yeah.
But the Greek word the author uses is hypostasis.
Hypostasis. Okay, what is that?
It's a compound word. Hypo means under. Stasis means standing.
So, that which stands under.
Literally, that which stands under. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. In the 1st century, archaeologists have found this word all over the place in papyri, but not in religious temples.
Oh.
They found it in legal archives.
Legal archives. What was it doing there?
Yes. In the ancient world, a hypostasis was a title deed.
Like a property deed for a house.
Exactly. For a house, for land, for property. Think about how Amazon works today. You go online, you find a new television, you click buy.
Right.
Money leaves your account. You get a confirmation email. Now, at that moment, do you have the TV?
No, not at all. I have an empty wall and a lighter bank account.
Do you see the TV?
No, it's in a warehouse somewhere in Kansas. I can't see it. I can't touch it. I certainly can't watch it.
But, and this is the crucial point, do you own it?
Yes. Legally, yes, I own it.
That confirmation email is the hypostasis. It is the substance of the thing hoped for. It's not a wish that the TV comes.
It's the guarantee.
It is the legal guarantee that the transaction is finished, and the reality is simply in transit. The text is saying faith is the title deed to the future.
Wow, okay. That puts a very different spin on hoped for. It's not, I hope I get a TV someday. It's,
Right.
I am awaiting the delivery of the property I already own.
Precisely. Faith turns hope, which can be vague and feel emotional, into a present possession. You possess the future now via the vehicle of faith.
So it's not a future wish, it's a present reality that just hasn't arrived yet.
That's it. And this connects deeply to the Hebrew background of the writer. The Hebrew concept behind this is related to the word etzem,
Etsem.
which means bone or essem.
Bone like a skeleton.
Exactly like a skeleton. When Adam first sees Eve in Genesis, he says, "This is now bone of my bones." He's saying she's the structural core of his own being.
So if we combine the Greek and the Hebrew ideas here,
We get a really powerful image. The text is arguing that faith is the skeleton of reality. It's not the icing on the cake, it's the rebar in the concrete.
and if you remove faith,
The entire structure of your life, of your reality, creates a collapse.
that makes sense. Because feelings fluctuate.
Constantly. If faith is a feeling, you're unstable. You wake up sad one morning, you lose your faith. You get some bad news, your faith is gone.
But if faith is a hypostasis,
A title deed. Then it doesn't matter if you're having a bad day. The deed is locked in the safe. The legal reality hasn't changed just because your mood has.
okay, that handles the substance part. That's huge. But the verse has a second half, the evidence of things not seen.
And this is our second technical term, elenchos.
Elenchos sounds like a delicious Greek lunch dish.
Chuckles. It does. But it's actually another legal term. It means proof, refutation, or cross-examination.
So it's courtroom language.
It's the evidence presented in a courtroom that compels a jury to a verdict. It's the smoking gun.
So faith acts as a lawyer, or the evidence itself.
In a sense, it acts as the evidence. Now, hang on, because this is where the modern mind revolts. We usually say, "I'll believe it when I see it."
Right. That's my default setting.
We demand sensory evidence first, then we grant belief.
It's the scientific method. You observe something, you gather data, and then you reach a conclusion.
Hebrews says faith operates in reverse. Faith is the evidence.
That sounds completely circular. My belief is the proof that my belief is true. That's just confirmation bias. You can justify anything that way.
It's not my belief is the proof. It's this mode of knowing, called faith, provides a proof that is higher and more reliable than sensory data.
Okay, unpack that. An example.
Think about gravity. You don't see gravity.
Right, I see its effects.
You see an apple fall.
Yeah.
You infer the law from the effect.
Yeah.
The law itself is invisible. Faith is a lawful mode of knowing. It proves reality to the conscience before the senses can verify it. It's the Hebrew concept of tokecha reproof, or demonstrated truth. It's the ability to see the verdict before the trial is over.
So you're saying faith is a valid form of epistemology. It's a way of knowing things that is distinct from just looking at them.
Correct. And verse 3 takes us out of the courtroom and into the cosmos.
By faith, we understand that the worlds were framed by the Word of God.
This is the cosmology section.
Right.
And it establishes an order of operations for reality. The modern materialist view is matter leads to meaning.
Stuff first, story second.
You have atoms, they bang together for billions of years. Eventually you get a brain, and that brain invents stories and meaning to cope with the random universe.
A very bleak picture, but yes, that's the view.
The biblical view and the view of Hebrews 11 is a complete opposite. Word leads to matter.
The worlds were framed by the Word of God.
Speech precedes structure.
So you're saying the universe is essentially made of language.
In a deep sense, yes. The universe is structured obedience to divine speech. God speaks, and reality responds by becoming material.
Which is why the verse finishes, so that things which are seen were not made of things which are visible.
There it is.
Now wait, you have a note here that emphasizes the difference between unseen and non-existent. That seems critical.
It's the most common mistake people make. We think if we can't see it, it's not there.
Out of sight, out of mind.
Exactly. But the text says, no, the unseen is simply the unmanifest. It's real. In fact, it might actually be more real than the chair you're sitting in. It just hasn't put on its physical clothes yet.
So faith is the intelligence.
It's the intelligence that understands the invisible world is the parent of the visible world.
So if you want to change the visible, your life, your history, your community, you have to operate in the invisible first.
That is the physics of faith. You don't rearrange the furniture to change the house. You change the blueprint.
Okay, so that's the theory. Faith is a title deed, faith is legal evidence, and faith is the blueprint. That's a lot to chew on.
And now, the text moves from theory to practice.
Right, it stops lecturing and starts giving us case studies. Section 2, the logic of pleasure and witness. And we start with a murder mystery.
Cain and Abel, Genesis 4.
This story has always bothered me. God accepts Abel's sacrifice and rejects Cain's. Growing up, I heard all kinds of reasons. God likes meat better than vegetables.
The barbecue theory of theology.
Exactly. Or Cain didn't give his best stuff. But it always feels so arbitrary. Why did God reject Cain?
Hebrews 11, verse 4, tells us exactly why, and it wasn't the stake.
Okay.
By faith, Abel offered a more excellent sacrifice. The difference wasn't the material, it was the mechanism.
It was his internal orientation, the posture of his heart.
It was the moral legitimacy of the act. This is what you could call the law of acceptable offering.
The law of acceptable offering.
God accepts the person before he accepts the gift. You can do the right thing. Cain brought an offering, which is a good religious act, but if you do it without faith, without that internal alignment, the action is void.
But is an internal orientation totally subjective? I mean, how do you measure that? I could say I have faith and just be a jerk.
That's where the word witness comes in. The text says Abel obtained witness that he was righteous.
So it wasn't just his own feeling.
No, the proof wasn't in his feelings. He was in God's testimony about him. And interestingly, Abel becomes the first martyr. Cain kills him.
He dies because of his faith.
He does. But the text adds a haunting phrase. Quote, "And through his faith, though he died, he still speaks."
The witness outlasts death.
Yes. The truth has a shelf life longer than the liar. Cain is a distant memory. Abel's voice is still echoing in this text thousands of years later.
Which sets up a perfect contrast with the next guy, Enoch. Abel died young. Enoch? Well, Enoch didn't die at all.
Enoch is the anomaly, the outlier in the dataset. Genesis says he was not, for God took him.
What does that mean structurally for this argument?
The text contrasts Enoch with religious performance. It doesn't say Enoch did a bunch of rituals or followed a bunch of rules.
No, it says he walked with God.
Right, and the Hebrew concept there is hidelek, a reflexive verb meaning walking back and forth with someone. It implies a constant, sustained communion, a lifestyle, not an event.
So he wasn't a Sunday morning believer?
He was a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
Yeah.
It was a continuous state.
Yeah.
And the result of that walk was that he pleased God.
What does that mean, to please God?
In Greek, that word implies fitting or agreeable. Enoch was so aligned with God's reality, so perfectly in sync, that death, which is the great separation, lost its jurisdiction over him.
That is a wild concept. It suggests that death requires a gap in the relationship to function.
That's a great way to put it.
If the relationship is seamless...
The break doesn't happen. It's a theological signpost. It's a flashing neon sign showing us that life, not death, is the ultimate baseline of the universe for those in communion with God.
And then right after Enoch, the author drops the hammer. Verse 6. Without faith, it is impossible to please him.
Impossible.
Not difficult, not rare, impossible. Why such an absolute statement? It feels, I don't know, exclusive.
It's not exclusive. It's just relational physics. Look at the two axioms the verse gives. To have a relationship with God, you must believe two things. First,
That he exists.
makes sense? Can't date a ghost. You have to believe the other person is real.
And the second thing.
That he is a rewarder of those who diligently seek him.
That's the tricky one.
It is. Because it's not just about existence, it's about character. You have to believe he is good.
Ah.
If I believe you exist, but I suspect you're abusive or indifferent or stingy, can I please you? Can I have a warm, open, trusting relationship with you?
No, you'll be walking on eggshells. You'll be fearful, constantly second-guessing.
Exactly. Distrust fractures communion. You literally cannot be in alignment with God. You cannot please him if you don't trust his character. That's why faith is the necessary condition. It's the gravity that holds the relationship together.
So faith isn't just believing God is there. It's believing God is worth finding.
That is the core of it, yes.
Okay, moving on to section 3, faith before law. We jump to Noah.
The man who built a battleship in a desert.
The text says he was warned of God of things not seen as yet. There's that unseen, again, the central theme.
And think about the data Noah had available to him. He's living in a region where, presumably, floods of that magnitude simply don't happen.
There was no precedent.
None. If he looked at the meteorological data, the probability of a global deluge was 0. He had no 5-day forecast showing rain.
So strictly speaking, from a data-driven perspective, building the ark was irrational.
According to the visible data, yes. But faith acts on revelation, not probability. Faith functions as foresight.
It prepares for a crisis that the current charts cannot predict.
It's what you might call preventative righteousness.
He didn't wait for the first drop of rain.
No. If he had waited for the sensory evidence, he would have drowned with everyone else. Faith acts early. And notice the social dynamic here. The text says that by building the ark, he condemned the world.
Did he? I don't recall verses in Genesis where Noah's standing on a soapbox screaming at people.
He didn't have to. This is condemnation by contrast.
Explain that.
Imagine a corrupt office where everyone is skimming money off the top. One guy decides to be honest. He doesn't have to preach. He doesn't have to report anyone. Just by being honest, by doing his work with integrity, he exposes the corruption of everyone else.
His actions become the sermon. The light exposes the darkness just by being light.
Exactly. For 120 years, Noah's hammering was the sermon. The act of preparation indicted his entire generation for their negligence.
Now help me with the proto-law idea mentioned in our outline. This is centuries before Moses, centuries before the Ten Commandments were written down.
Right.
So how is Noah righteous if there was no law to follow?
That's the brilliant insight of this section. Faith functions as the internal software of morality before the external hardware of a written code exists.
So he didn't need a rule book.
Noah didn't need a written statute to know that ignoring God was wrong, that violence and corruption were a dead end. Faith aligns the conscience with natural law, with divine law. It proves that moral order exists before legal order is ever written down.
So faith is the compass you use when you don't have a map.
Perfect analogy. Which brings us to the man who literally threw away his map, Abraham. Section 4.
The covenantal journey. The text says Abraham went out not knowing where he was going.
As a modern person, that terrifies me. Everything in me rebels against that.
Oh, absolutely. Try telling your spouse, honey, pack the bags, we're moving. Okay, where? No idea. Why? A voice told me you'd be committed.
It sounds insane.
Right.
But this is the distinction the text is drawing between strategic planning and faithful living.
What's the difference?
Strategy requires a destination. Strategy requires coordinates, a business plan, a 5-year projection.
But faith.
Faith trusts the caller, not the coordinates.
He traded the security of place, and was a sophisticated, secure city for the security of promise.
He left certainty to find covenant. That is a departure without a map.
And he wasn't the only one taking a massive risk. Section 4.2 brings Sarah into the spotlight, and this is biological. This isn't just about geography.
Sarah is pivotal. The obstacle for Abraham was geography. The obstacle for Sarah was physiology. She is barren. She is past the age of childbearing.
It's a closed door. Medically, it's over.
It's a brick wall. But look at the language in verse 11. It says she judged him faithful who had promised.
Judged. That's a cognitive word, not an emotional one.
It is. It's a word of reason and assessment. She didn't feel faithful. The text says she made a judgment call. She evaluated the character of God against the reality of her own dead womb, and she decided that God's character was a more fundamental law of reality than her own biology.
Wow. That is generative trust.
It literally creates power. The text says she received strength to conceive. Faith overrides biology.
So promise is more powerful than physiology.
Look, if you rely on your capacity, you're limited to what you can do. If you rely on promise, you're limited only by what God can do. It's a completely different equation.
And the result was descendants as the stars from a starting point of 0.
An infinite outcome from a 0 capacity starting point. That is the math of faith.
But, and here comes the twist in section 4.3, they never actually got the land. Not really.
This is the paradox, isn't it? They arrive in the promised land, and they live in tents.
Why? Abraham was rich. The text says he had silver, gold, livestock. He could have built a fortress. He could have founded a city. Why live like a refugee in the very land you own?
Because of the identity shift. Faith turned them into pilgrims and strangers.
Strangers and exiles on the earth. That's the quote.
They realized that the dirt of Canaan wasn't the ultimate point. If they had built a city there, they would have settled for the shadow instead of the substance. They were looking for something more.
A better country? A heavenly one?
Right. Their desire for a future heavenly city governed their ethics in the present.
Imagine the psychological toll of that, though. You own the land, but you sleep in a tent in the backyard. It's a deliberate daily refusal to settle.
It's an anchor and a rudder. They bought burial plots, which anchors them to land, but they lived in tents, which kept them mobile.
So they're saying,
our bodies will rest in this ground, but our hope, our citizenship, is elsewhere.
And the text says something beautiful because of that. Therefore, God is not ashamed to be called their God.
And why? For he has prepared a city for them. Because they weren't ashamed to be pilgrims, he wasn't ashamed to be their God. He's honored when we refuse to be satisfied with immediate gratification. He's honored when we hold out for the full promise.
Okay, section 5. This gets deep. We need to slow down here. Generational continuity and the logic of resurrection. We're talking about Isaac.
The ultimate test. The binding of Isaac.
God gives Abraham the son he waited 25 years for. The miracle baby, the entire future of this covenant people depends on this one kid, and then God says, kill him.
is the most horrific command in Scripture. It seems to contradict everything we know about God.
It contradicts God's own goodness. It contradicts the promise he just made. Through Isaac shall your seed be called. It makes no
That
sense.
seems like a divine contradiction.
So why did Abraham agree? Was it just blind obedience? Was he some kind of religious robot just following orders no matter how monstrous?
No, and this is where we need to look at the Greek word logisamenos. The text says Abraham accounted or considered or reasoned.
He did the math. It wasn't an emotional reaction.
He was running a syllogism in his head
Yes.
while he walked up that mountain with his son. Let's walk through the logic with him.
Okay.
Premise 1. God is not a liar. God promised Isaac is the heir, and the promise will come through him. That is a fixed point.
Premise 2.
Premise 2. God has commanded me to sacrifice Isaac as a burnt offering. That is also a fixed, though terrible point.
Premise 3 is that both of those things have to be true at the same time.
Right, and the only way those two things can both be true.
Is if Isaac stands up out of the ashes.
Resurrection.
Abraham reasoned that God was able to raise him from the dead. He believed in resurrection before there was any theological precedent for it, before anyone had ever seen it.
It is incredibly sophisticated. It's not blind faith. It's the logic of the impossible.
It's faith that reasons its way through a paradox.
Exactly. It's the logic that says, I can lose this thing, and God can give it back. And the text says he did receive him back, in a figure, or figuratively.
This theme of future-proofing, of thinking beyond your own lifespan, continues with Jacob and Joseph.
It does. Jacob is on his deathbed.
Right, verse 21. By faith, Jacob, when he was dying, blessed each of the sons of Joseph and worshipped, leaning on the top of his staff.
His body was failing, but his faith was at its peak. He's at the threshold of death, and what is he doing? He's determining the destiny of tribes for centuries to come.
Even at death, faith speaks of the future.
Always. Which leads to Joseph.
Right. Section 5.3, Joseph is dying in Egypt. He's the prime minister. He's wildly successful. But he gives a very weird instruction about his remains.
When I die, he says, don't leave my bones here.
Carry my bones up from here. Why does that matter? He's dead.
It's a protest. Silent, centuries-long protest. Joseph knew the Exodus was coming, but he also knew it might be centuries away.
So the bones were a reminder.
By commanding them to keep his bones unburied, or at least ready to move, he turned his own skeleton into a time capsule.
So every time the Israelites for hundreds of years saw Joseph's coffin in Goshen, it was a message.
It was a sermon. It said, we don't belong here. Don't get comfortable. We are leaving. His bones were a covenantal anchor that resisted assimilation into Egyptian culture.
That is playing the long game. That's incredible foresight.
Faith operates on a timeline longer than a single human life. It has to.
Which brings us to Section 6, legitimate authority and civil disobedience. We are now entering the story of Moses. And we start not with him, but with his parents.
Amram and Jochebed, the unsung heroes of the resistance.
Pharaoh, the absolute authority in the land, issues an edict. Kill all the male Hebrew babies. It's the law of the land. Infanticide is state policy.
And they disobey. The text says they were not afraid of the king's edict. This is one of the first clear biblical examples of civil disobedience authorized by faith.
But let's be clear about the stakes here. This isn't posting a hashtag on social media. This is high treason.
The highest.
If they get caught, they die. The baby dies. Their whole family is probably executed.
The stakes are total. So why did they do it? The text gives a curious reason. It says they saw the child was beautiful.
Again, surely that's not just aesthetics. Every parent thinks their kid is cute.
Right. It's not about him being a pretty baby.
Yeah.
Beautiful here implies a divine mark. They saw destiny. They saw that God's stamp was on this child.
And that gave them their authorization.
And here's the principle. Faith authorizes you, and in fact it compels you, to disobey human law when human law violates divine covenant.
It's a hierarchy of obedience. God is a higher authority than Pharaoh.
Exactly. And notice the text says they were not afraid. Usually you disobey the law out of anger or rebellion or fear. They disobeyed out of peace. They feared God more than the king, which made them fearless of the king.
And Moses picks up this baton when he grows up. Section 6.2, identity politics.
Moses had the ultimate privilege. He was raised as the son of Pharaoh's daughter. He had the Ivy League education of his day, the wealth, the power. He was set for life.
And he refused it. The text uses that active verb. He made a choice.
He refused the identity. He chose to be mistreated along with the people of God over the pleasures of sin for a short time.
That is a complete value inversion. Most people spend their lives trying to get into the palace. Moses walked out. Why?
Because he did a long-term audit. He regarded disgrace for the sake of Christ as of greater value than the treasures of Egypt.
Wait, disgrace for the sake of Christ. How does Christ fit into the story of Moses?
It's a typological reading by the author of Hebrews. He's seeing Moses' choice to identify with the suffering people of God as a prefiguring of the ultimate identification of Christ with humanity. He considered the shame of being a Hebrew as greater wealth than all the gold of Egypt.
That sounds noble, but practically how?
Because, the text says, he was looking ahead to his reward. He knew Egypt was a sinking ship. The treasures were temporary. The covenant was eternal. He was playing the stock market of eternity, and he shorted Egypt.
So his faith gave him a different way of calculating value.
A completely different ledger, which led to the Exodus itself.
The Red Sea. The text says, by faith, the people passed through the Red Sea as on dry land.
Notice the word people. This was a collective faith. It wasn't just Moses holding a stick. 1 million people had to decide to walk into a wall of water.
One person panicking could have caused a stampede.
For sure. But then look what happens next. The Egyptians try to do the exact same physical act. They try to walk into the seabed.
And they drowned.
Why? This is the lesson. Form without authority leads to destruction. The path was open for Israel because they were aligned with God's command. The Egyptians were acting on presumption, not faith.
So faith isn't just mimicking the miracle, it's having the relationship that authorizes the miracle.
You've got it. That's the key.
Now, I want to pause here because the outline explicitly calls for us to talk about crisis leadership and the judges. We usually skip over Rahab and the judges in this chapter, but they are there.
They are essential.
Yeah.
Because Moses sets up the law, but the judges represent governance in chaos when everything is falling apart.
Let's talk about Rahab. She's not an Israelite. She's a prostitute in the enemy city of Jericho. She is the ultimate outsider.
And yet, this text puts her in the hall of faith. Why? Because she has more faith than most of the insiders.
What do you mean?
While the Israelite spies are trembling and hiding on her roof, she is the one telling them, I know that the Lord is giving you this land.
She recognized the God of Israel when the walls were still standing and her own people were in power.
Exactly. Faith is an equalizer. It doesn't care about your resume, your ethnicity, or your social standing. It cares about your alignment. She aligned with the incoming kingdom before it arrived.
And then you get this list of the judges. Gideon, Barak, Samson, Jephthah. These are flawed guys.
Deeply.
I mean, Samson was a mess, a total disaster of a human being in many ways. Gideon was afraid of his own shadow at first.
They were deeply flawed. But the text says, through faith, they subdued kingdoms, worked righteousness, obtained promises.
So faith isn't about being a perfect person.
No. This is crucial. Faith is about governance. Even through flawed, broken vessels, faith can establish justice and order. It shows that the power isn't in the person. The power is in the connection to God. The tool doesn't have to be perfect for the hand using it to be skilled.
Which brings up the idea of law above the throne.
Right. The inclusion of the prophets and judges in this list, right alongside David the king, shows that true power is always accountable to a higher power. Faith confronts earthly power with divine truth.
Whether it's Rahab deceiving the king's guards or Samuel the prophet rebuking King Saul.
Faith is the check on human tyranny. It's the ultimate accountability.
Okay, we've been on a real high here, conquering kingdoms, stopping the mouths of lions, parting seas. But now, Section 7, the music changes abruptly.
Section 7 is the pivot point of the entire chapter, the hinge.
It starts in verse 35. Women receive their dead raised to life again. Okay, that's good. That fits the pattern, but then... And others were tortured, not accepting deliverance.
And it gets worse from there. They faced jeers and flogging. They were put to death by stoning. They were sawn in two.
Sawn in two? That's just horrific.
It's the ancient tradition regarding the prophet Isaiah. The evil King Manasseh had him executed by being sawn in half with a wooden saw.
Wait, pause. We just spent all this time talking about how faith conquers kingdoms and shuts lions' mouths. Now you're telling me faith gets you sawn in half? That sounds like a failure of faith.
It looks like a failure to the naked eye. To our results-oriented culture, it's a total loss. But Hebrews insists this is the same faith.
How can it be the same? One guy escapes the sword, the next guy dies by the sword.
This is the lesson we desperately need to hear today. Faith is not a mechanism for escaping suffering.
Say that again.
Faith is not a tool to get out of pain. Faith is the capacity to endure suffering without losing your allegiance.
The phrase not accepting deliverance stands out to me. It implies they had a choice. They could have gotten out of it.
They absolutely had a choice. In almost every case of martyrdom in history, there is an out. Just pinch the incense to Caesar. Just deny the name. Just stop preaching. If they had done that, the torture would stop.
So they chose the torture.
They chose the torture because, as the text says, they were looking to obtain a better resurrection. This is moral supremacy.
What's that?
It proves that their loyalty to God was stronger than their biological instinct to survive. They valued their integrity more than their own life.
And the text gives a verdict on these people, of whom the world was not worthy.
That is the mic drop of the chapter.
It is.
The world looked at these people and said, "You are criminals. You are outcasts. You are trash. We are going to dispose of you." God looks at the same event and says, "No, the world, your empire, your culture, your civilization, you aren't good enough to have these people walking on your soil."
It completely reverses the judgment.
Completely. Martyrdom isn't a defeat in this economy. It's an indictment of the system that killed them.
That is heavy. So faith spans the entire spectrum. It's the power to conquer, and it's the power to die well.
Same substance, different assignment.
Which leads us to the final and maybe the most confusing problem. Section 8, the theology of delay. Verse 39 says, "And all these, though commended through their faith, did not receive what was promised."
They didn't get it. After all that,
Mm-hmm.
Abraham didn't see the city. David didn't see the Messiah. The martyrs didn't see justice on earth.
Is that fair? I mean, they did all the work. They ran the race. They should get the prize.
It's not about our modern concept of individual fairness. It's about a much larger scope. The text gives the reason. God had provided something better for us, that they without us should not be made perfect.
Without us, that little phrase changes everything.
Think of it like a massive 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle. Abraham put down the corner pieces. Moses did the edges. The prophets and the martyrs filled in the sky. But a puzzle isn't perfect. It isn't complete until the final piece is placed.
And we are the final pieces.
We are. The concept is corporate perfection. The finish line isn't crossed individually. It's crossed corporately as a single body through time.
So Abraham is waiting.
He's standing at the finish line, looking back, checking his watch. He can't receive his full reward until we finish our lap.
That reframes everything. It's not just me and my own personal journey trying to get through the day. It's a relay race.
That's the exact image the author moves to in chapter 12, verse 1. Therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses.
The stadium,
Right.
the crowd in the stadium.
It's a stadium. They aren't just dead people in the ground. They are the alumni in the stands. They've run their leg. They've passed the baton. Now they're leaning over the railing, cheering, shouting encouragement because the race can't end until we run.
That creates a massive sense of responsibility. We are holding the baton that Abraham carried, that Rahab carried, that Isaiah carried.
Exactly. Faith is an inheritance. It's not something you create from scratch. We are custodians of an unfinished story.
So let's bring this all together. Let's synthesize this. We started with faith as hypostasis, the title deed to reality.
The physics of the universe.
We saw it as the internal compass with Noah, operating before any written law. The generative power with Sarah, creating life from impossibility.
The logic of resurrection with Abraham at the sacrifice of Isaac.
The authorization for civil disobedience with Moses' parents. And finally, the endurance of the martyrs, choosing loyalty over life.
It truly is the architecture of reality. It is the physics of the invisible.
And the final provocation for you, the listener, is this. The story isn't over.
It's not. The baton is in your hand.
If the heroes of the past are waiting on us to complete the promise, what does that mean for how you live today? In your job, in your family, in your community, you are the next witness.
Will you run with the same substance? That's the question this chapter leaves us with.
This has been a deep dive that actually felt deep. Thank you for unpacking this with me.
It was my pleasure.
To our listeners, don't just read the list. Join the race. We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.